Oh, hello. I didn't see you come in there. You're tuning in for the first time to Will's Book Vlogs. Will's Book Vlogs. Before I get into my subject today, the story or the premise of this show basically is kind of, I used to be an avid reader. I read a lot all the time as a kid, and getting into college and doing video games and doing lots of theater and like this, that, and the other thing, I kind of fell out of the habit of reading for enjoyment, and I kind of reflecting on 2015 a little bit, I realized I didn't read a single book in 2015. That was a little disturbing or upsetting to me. And so I made a New Year's resolution of I'm going to read 12 books a year. But anyway, so I was a little nervous, so when I was like, okay, I need to ease myself in slowly, let's not get too crazy right away. And so, I chose this book, Stephen King's 11/22/63, which if you can't see, is about a little shy of 900 pages, which is a lot. That's a pretty thick book for not reading a book for a year. But Hulu has a show based off this book that's about to come out. I found out it was gonna be the first week of February, and so I was kind of well, shit. I guess I gotta read the Stephen King book, And you would think a month is enough time to do a 900-page book. Let's shave off 50 pages every couple days. What I actually ended up doing is I waited till the last week. And then I read 200 pages, and I read 600 pages, and I read another 200 pages, and I finished all this book for you in about 6 days. So anyways, let's get into the meat of the review, why you're here. Stephen King's 11/22/63. What did you think? What did I think of it? I thought it was pretty interesting. One of the reasons I chose the Stephen King book is I really I grew up on Stephen King. He was one of the first authors I got really into or whatever. I remember reading The Shining, and then I read Firestarter and Cujo, and I was so metal, man. I was super metal. In 7th grade, I did a book report on it, and it was, not only was it about a crazy homicidal clown that murdered children, it's also 1100 pages long. And so I was the coolest kid in school because I read a 1100-page book, which really just meant I did a lot of work, too much work for a 7th grade book report. So I grew up on Stephen King, and but I realized when I started reading this book is I've read so much Stephen King in my life, I'm really into his kind of his cadence, his writing styles or whatever, his voice, I automatically replugged into that. But all of the Stephen King I read was from the 70s and 80s. So a lot of the references and pop culture references and things he makes in his books were all references that went kind of way over my head. They were things before my time, I didn't get them or whatever. So reading a contemporary Stephen King book, contemporary as in it came out in 2011, it's really weird to hear something in Stephen King's voice but then have him be talking about Harry Potter or the internet. It was a really kind of surreal thing. So I guess that was kind of a little bit of a quirk or an interesting thing about this read. But let's get to the meat. Why this book? Well, this is a book about time travel. And I'm kind of a huge fan of time travel. Back to the Future, Doctor Who's, Star Trek The Voyage Home. I love time travel. And it's not just about time, Stephen King, check. Time travel, check. What's the last thing to rope Will Sullivan into this product? Let's make this whole thing about a conspiracy theory, and not just any way out there conspiracy theory. Let's make it about the Kennedy assassination. Let's have someone travel back in time to try to prevent the Kennedy assassination. And I'm boom, freaking sold. I guess one of the first questions that comes up once you kind of know the premise is how is this book 900 pages long? Well, the gimmick of the book or whatever is the guy finds kind of a wormhole that brings him back to about 1958. He wants to stay to stop Lee Harvey Oswald from killing Kennedy. Then he has to give away about 5 years of his life or whatever. And so that's really where the thickness of this book kind of comes from, of once you think about 5 years of a man's life, waiting to prevent Kennedy from being assassinated. That's a lot of time, you know, and so there's a lot of kind of like interesting and like cool detours. I think one of my favorite things that happens in this book, he goes back in time on like kind of a mini mission before the Kennedy mission to prevent a guy from murdering his whole family on Halloween or whatever. And it's kind of like a test. He's like, he's really kind of like a little bit concerned about the butterfly effect and like, if I saved someone's life who was going to die, will that have major impacts on the world around us or whatever? And so anyways, he goes to Derry, Maine or whatever, and like keep like reading Derry and I hear the descriptions and like there's like a lot of like weirdness in this town and like stuff that's like kind of familiar and like very, very subtle references to things. And it's not until he comes up on two kids that are like practicing waltzing. I think it's definitely Bev and I can't remember the other guys. I want to say it's Georgie, something like that. And then it freaking clicked for me. Derry, Maine is where it takes place. Basically, this book, the main character of this book visits Derry, Maine right after they go through all of like the clown homicides and massacres or whatever. And he actually meets the kids that stopped it or whatever. And so, I mean, that's just like super nerdy and cool. It's like one of those things of like, you know, as someone who's like really into comics and sci-fi, the immediate step from there is, well, clearly this is a sign that every Stephen King book ever written takes place in the same universe on a same like timeline. But I mean, obviously, that's not necessarily Stephen King's intention. He's not trying to build the cinematic universe. But it is kind of like a little nice like wink and a nod to people who are fans of him. I guess one of the most surprising things to me about this book is kind of the most fulfilling section of this had nothing to do with the Kennedy murder. It was way more about this guy going to Texas and kind of becoming a substitute teacher and then eventually a full teacher. And like he puts on a school play and like obviously the young like theater kid has a pretty big connection to the English teacher that went and directed a few plays. This book has all the Stephen King tropes like every book. Like is the main character divorced? Yes. But alcoholism, divorce, homicidal tendencies, blah 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 blah. You know, like there people talk about a Stephen King drinking game. Like all the boxes are checked. But I guess like one of the most interesting things about this is, to me, this story is really about a guy who has to go out of his own time to kind of find himself and find like purpose in like what he's doing or whatever. It's in like this in the early 60s in a small town in Texas that this young kind of like this young super liberal cool dude English teacher really discovers himself, and he discovers like his love for teaching, and he discovers his love for like creating, and he discovers how to love again. Like he finds a partner. I mean, and like I'm not gonna spoil it, but like the relationship in this book is like so rich. I guess like that's pretty much like all I have to say. I would recommend it. It's a pretty solid book. If reading isn't your thing or whatever, I can kind of see like this is gonna be like a great mini series. Like 8 episodes will do all the content and richness justice. I think one of the biggest reasons I wanted to read this book before this show, and one of the reasons I'm most excited for this show, is like the main character is going to be played by James Franco. So yeah, that's my review of 11/22/63. Obviously like there's not like a format. If you're a fan of me from the other Baltic Avenue production show, I do a podcast called The Pitch. Very highly segmented, regimented. I have a co-host. This is kind of the first venture I'm flying solo. This is kind of one of our first ventures into YouTube, you know, kind of trying to figure out the way that landscape works. One of the last things I would say to look forward to is usually these are going to drop at the end of the month. The month of February's show is kind of themed around Valentine's Day. So that video will drop on Valentine's Day, and I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to ruin what that book is, but I'm really, really excited to it. I mean, like, this is if I had not done a show or like had made a New Year's resolution, next month's book was like one of the books I absolutely had to read next year, no matter what. But I hope you found this interesting. I hope you maybe want to check this book out. If nothing else, thanks for joining me on my journey as I start to try and become a reader again. There'll probably be some links. I don't know. There'll be some links somewhere around here. I think they're called annotations on YouTube. You probably maybe find the pitch somewhere around here. Maybe you'll like check out Drinking Closets, and that link will be down here. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found this somewhat coherent, somewhat logically organized conversation fulfilling. And please tune in next week. And keep reading. Is that a thing? Do I say that? Why not? Keep reading.